My name is Shana Jane, a certified sobriety health and wellness coach with 14 years of experience in the treatment industry, and also my own history with substance abuse. As the founder and CEO of Controlled Chaos, I've made it my mission to provide a supportive community for those facing alcoholism and addiction. This podcast is a real, no-nonsense exploration of life in sobriety. No sugarcoating, just real, honest conversations. Life after addiction can be a crazy, wild ride. And here at Controlled Chaos, we're here to tackle it head on. From navigating relationships to finding purpose, we're your lifeline in chaos. Let's dive into the real challenges of sobriety and carve out our path together. I love y'all mucho. Let's go.
Welcome to Controlled Chaos. I'm your host, Shana. And Kim, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
So my name is Kim Bellis. In 2013, unfortunately, my son Matthew started having grand mal seizures. We thought right away it was because of football, but little did we know he was going to be epileptic and would be on medication the rest of his life. So our lives went from a little football star to me being a maniac and not wanting him to even ride a bicycle because I was so afraid. And it took about, I guess, a little bit over 6 months until we had the medication, in order. Well, or so we thought. And, I said to him after a few months, okay, you have to get out. You have to go see your friends. Not normal just to stay home. So I'd drive him, and half an hour later, I'd get back. He'd call me and say, come and get me. So the third time I said, Matt, this is crazy. What's going on? And he said, I don't fit in. Everybody's drinking or doing drugs. And I said, oh, come on, that's crazy. And as I said it, naturally, I had a huge glass of wine in my hand. And, I really thought, wow, you were such a hypocrite. So I decided at that second, I said, just like that, Matthew, I'm going to stop drinking for 3 months to support you. And 3 months came and went. And then he said, see, you could be like everybody else again, Mom. And I said, nope, I'll do another 3 months. And here I am 11 years later. So basically, I loved him more than I loved myself. And, as a mom, I just wanted to make him better and I couldn't because, and the first year we were in and out of the hospital about 10 or 11 times sometimes because of alcohol. He would be like, with the boys in the park or whatever. And so it was just having to change everything. So Sober's the New Cool was born just because I realized at that time I was 52. And it was hard for me because everywhere I went, somebody said, there's nothing wrong with you. You don't have a problem. You can just come here. We'll just have a drink together and nobody will know. And I said, but I'll know. And I promised my son I was going to do this with him. And then I thought, wow, it's this hard for me at 52. How is a 14 or 15-year-old kid going to manage these social, and it wasn't a thing about addiction at that time for him. It was a thing about health. And, as time went on, the more I didn't drink, the more I realized how much I was drinking and how much better I felt. No, I didn't live underneath a bridge. No, my life wasn't a chaotic mess other than my son being sick. But it was just, alcohol is just not good for me. So I just don't want to ever have another sip because I don't want to lose what I have now. And, we created Sober's the New Cool to give him a way to talk about, me not drinking, which took the heat off him kind of. And he'd tell his friends, you can't bring beer into the house with those little bottles of gin or vodka or whatever, rum. And he'd say, my mom stopped drinking for me, so you can't bring that. And so I guess we both used each other for the first year. And, at one point I said, Matt, I'm so sorry you got sick, but I got a life back that I never knew. I was living half a life instead of a full life. So we just started Sober's the New Cool, and we just started getting messages from around the world. And there was nothing at that point where people were really talking about it. And it just snowballed into a wonderful world and a wonderful life. So here we are.
That is so amazing. I have so many things going through my head. So, first of all, I came up on your page, one of the first pages that I seen when I came onto Instagram, onto kind of like the sober scene, I guess, on Instagram. And I had came from living in Texas and working at a huge treatment center that was super popular, and I was working, and I was not sober, and I was lying, and I was helping other women, but I could not get my life together on the outside. And I had so many friends, and I had so many, and nobody knew me for real, right? Like I would go home and drink and be miserable, and I was like not always making it to work. There were a lot of signs, but people love you, so they just want to give you the benefit of the doubt. I ended up moving back home to Michigan, and in Michigan, where I live in a very small town, there is really no sober scene. So I had to take a break, and I had to like get honest and get sober for real, and then started my sobriety career, my real sobriety career about 3 years ago. And then when I started feeling like happy and healthy and like I was really okay, I was like, I really want to get back into like working with people and talking about sobriety. And I just found people on Instagram, and you were the first person that I saw, and I saw you on a podcast. So it kind of birthed my whole controlled chaos thing that I have going on. So it's so cool to have you here, I have to say.
Oh, you know what? I'm so honored to be here because I just think it's like, especially that you're young, it's just moving it forward for everybody. I mean, people look at me and they say, okay, well, she's older and blah, blah, blah. And it's, oh, she's 11 years. She doesn't know what we're going through. Yeah. So it's good that everybody has a little part of the journey to help people along, right? Because together, that's the only way it's going to work.
Yeah, and I think it's so cool that you never know when you start these things, like who or how many people you're affecting, right? Because I know when this thing started with your son, you thought it was about you and your son, but it's become so much bigger, right?
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, it was in a kitchen island. This was all done. My sister drawing on it. I still have the napkin. I looked at it this way. She had done it to go up and down. So it just all worked in a crazy little way. And what I thought was, like you said, just for him. The UK was like, everyone was like, there was messages coming like all from every section of the United Kingdom. And because
Right.
they were talking about it a lot before the United States or Canada. And Canada is way behind everybody else. They're getting there now, but we're still behind.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people in Canada that have these pages and stuff, like I've noticed, and I think that's really cool. I also think it's very cool. So for me, everyone that I had met was, an alcoholic. They had like struggled very hardly or very hard, or they were drinking all the time. And since I've been introduced to like the online community, you really see how alcoholism, or even just a problem with alcohol, it really is progressive. And some people stop, because it's not healthy, it's not going well in their life, it's causing them, maybe not to do their best or whatever. And that is no different than anybody who's had a really hard time with alcohol. I think the change or the difference there is just how long you keep going, right?
Yeah. And you know what? I think that that's perfect what you just said, because everybody's journey is different, and it doesn't have to be, nobody should compare. What's good for you is good for you, period. What works for you, period. There's no explanations needed. And at the beginning, everybody kind of looked at me and went, oh, no, there's not a real problem here. That she did, the looking from the outside in, like you said, nobody knew what you were going through. It's funny how people sometimes don't know what we're going through.
Yeah, and I think that, like growing up, I remember my grandpa had emphysema, and he smoked like a chimney, and my grandma too, and my mom was like in my ear all the time about smoking, how bad it was, how horrible. I remember I had my first daughter and, I started smoking in high school, and my daughter got to like 5 and she would see me smoke and she would be like, Mom, Grandma said, if you smoke, you will die. Like I had to quit, right? Because I was so tired of her saying that in the middle of Walmart, right? Like you're going to die if you keep doing that. But alcohol was always just there, and like everybody did it all the time. And now you're hearing all this stuff about it being, a carcinogen and like poison and all this type of stuff that's coming out. And it's like, it really isn't good for you. Like if you're not an alcoholic, it's okay to say, hey, this isn't good for my system. It doesn't cause me good things. And I want to take it out of my life. It's cool to see a lot of people just feeling that way without anything else, because it makes people who are really struggling or identify as alcoholics or whatever, it makes it normal for them.
Yes. And look, it's not any different than when I grew up, everybody would basically drink and drive. My kids are 28 and 26. There was no question. They took Ubers, they took taxis, they took buses, trains, whatever. And there was always a designated driver, or 90% of the time. So things were changing, but not, it has to be normal. And nobody should have to say why they want to be healthy or well.
I agree. And growing up in AA, I guess I always heard, we would say people that drank and they weren't alcoholics, we'd be like, oh, they're a normie. And it finally occurred to me, like, why is that normal? Like, why is it normal for people who smoke weed, even though it's legal in Michigan now? We don't call them normies, right? Like they choose to smoke pot, and that's okay. But it shouldn't be the normal that you're putting something chemically into your body that changes it. Like the normal should be your body how it is.
Exactly. And, I think that what it comes down to is if alcohol is causing any kind of problem in your life, then it is an issue,
Yeah. And I do love that. I love that people are coming out now and just saying like, hey, it's just not healthy in general. And I choose to do more healthy things and feeling better every day.
Yeah. And, living a better life, and just for your mental health also, to be more positive, to be able to go and exercise or have more energy or to be whatever. It just gives so much more to you and takes away. That's it.
So can you tell us, I know that you said you quit drinking 11 years ago. What changes did you see in your life that made you know that it was the better option?
Well, the first thing was, I guess, because my son was sick at the beginning, it was no focus on me. It was all about him, right? But I did notice right away, especially having a child that was sick, my sleep was so much better. That was the number one thing, because I would get up, I don't know how many times in the night to go see if, he was okay. And, but that was part of the alcohol, because when you drink, you get those sugar ups and downs in the night, and you wake up and your sleep is disrupted. And on top of being nervous, I was more nervous, even though, everybody says alcohol is, calms you down. No, it does the opposite. So that was number one. And then number two, I think, was just feeling like more awake, feeling, and then the other thing too, when I would drink, because I never liked confrontation, that was like my chance to say what I had to say. And the next day I would say, I'm sorry, but I wasn't really sorry for what I said. I was sorry for how I said it. So now without the liquor, whenever I did say something, I didn't have to say sorry anymore. And I did choose my words better, So, and I think slowly I realized all the things that I used to do, like I did a lot of work for cancer in those days, planning parties and fundraisers. I always thought, oh, it's not going to be good enough. And I always had all this stuff, and I'd have, 2 glasses of wine before it would start because I wanted everything to be perfect. And little did I know, I talked so much better without the booze than with it, right? So it was all tiny little things and just feeling so much better. And then finding such a passion and learning to, I guess, finally think, okay, I'm not so bad. For me, since I was little, I didn't think I was pretty enough. I was smart enough. I was this, I was that. And then slowly I started to realize, you know what? I'm okay just the way I am. But it took time to rebuild, self-esteem. And that was huge. That was huge.
Yeah, I think I definitely used alcohol like as I was younger for a self-esteem boost or like a confidence boost. Like
Yes.
I could talk to who I wanted, say whatever I wanted. And then even though, like you said, I would use it to calm my anxiety, the more I went on as an alcoholic for years, the more shaky I got, the more scared I got to go out in public because I felt like people could tell I was shaky and I didn't feel good. So then that's all I was thinking about was talking, right? They're going to know, they're going to see me, they're going to all this stuff. And once I quit drinking, I had so much confidence because I wasn't constantly worrying about, did they know I was drinking all the time,
I think the other thing too, I guess at the time when I stopped being 52, my kids were a bit older and they were like in middle school or high school, and I would see a lot of kids taking different medication for exam period and still drink.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody was talking about that and how dangerous that was. Like all of a sudden my eyes were, and I'm not a stranger to having alcohol problems in my family. So, right there and then, it's not like this just came from nowhere. There were people in my family that drank too much. So my eyes were open, but not to the extent, especially with kids and studying and taking ADHD medicine or whatever pill they were taking to study through the night and then drink. And then no wonder they were so depressed. No wonder there were so many suicides. No wonder there were so many kids all of a sudden going to psychologists and psychiatrists. I mean, well, of course, you're not supposed to do that. Take medication and drink. So there were so many things that it was like every time I turned around and thought, okay, I've done, my thing for Matthew, and he would get better. And then, whoops, the seizures would start again. So we were like on a roller coaster. Something would keep bringing me back, to keep going.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up ADD medication because that was actually how my original addiction started. When I was 11 years old, I was like doing really bad in school and things like that. And my mom took me to the doctor and I got put on ADHD medication. Well, I was kind of chunky at the time and I was getting bad grades, and literally it felt like within 2 days, like God had came down and fixed all my problems. Like I wasn't eating all day. I was studying. I was doing all this, and it was great until I started because back then, like I'm so old, right? But back then ADHD wasn't like a known thing. Like all those meds weren't everywhere, right? Because I'm 38. So this was like 25 years ago or something. It wasn't known like it is now. So, my mom just gave me my bottle of medication and I was like, oh, I'm tired. I'm going to take another one because I knew it would help me wake up a little or study or do whatever. And I didn't know anything about addiction. I mean, I'm sure I knew that it wasn't great to take another pill, but I was like, oh, one helps, two will do much better.
Exactly.
And then as I got to high school.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got to high school and started drinking. And I always tell everybody I knew I had a problem very, very quickly and much younger than most people. But I think the reason was I was on those medications. So when everybody else was passing out, I was still ready to go. I was like, why can't we find more? Like from literally like freshman year, I was like out drinking like the men, right? And it's because I had this stimulant on board. So I really not that I say anything bad about medications or anything like that, but with my own children, I've really had to back up and are you sure that's what they need? Do they maybe need better nutrition? Do they maybe need better? Because there's so many things that can stunt your growth or stop you from growing at such a young age,
And not just that, they say exercise is the least thing that doctors recommend for children to get outside and play, or adults to exercise, because that will be the best thing for their mental health. And it just goes down. And it's just because even today, a lot of people that, don't talk about medication and alcohol, and they mix, and they, like you said, they can go a lot longer. So then the alcohol just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and the pills, and it's just a bad circle.
It is. And it's funny because I talk about my alcoholism a lot, but truthfully, what started the whole ball rolling was that medication. And it was something that I quit far before I quit the alcohol. And that was because my heart was messed up. I had to have heart surgery from the having it go fast, go slow all the time, taking so many, not taking so many. I ended up having to have heart surgery. So for me, I was like, okay, I'm going to quit that. But once I quit that, I was like, oh my gosh, I was blacking out all the time. All this stuff was happening that didn't used to happen because I was on uppers.
Yeah.
So it's a huge thing that you bring that up because I think that people that are in high school, in college, maybe even middle school, those are like your prime years where your body isn't as picky. So you may not notice things that aren't good for you right away, right? Like when I was younger, I was able to take some pills and drink and I felt okay. Once I got a little older to my 20s, I started to feel like I was dying all the time, right?
Yeah.
Going to the hospital all the time, not feeling well, all this stuff because I had all these things on board. And, I wasn't willing to admit that at the time, but mixing the pills and the alcohol, it can be so bad for you.
And now I find there's a lot of young mothers that, are at home and they're overwhelmed and, they work from home or they, raise a family, they work, there's just so many hours in a day and not enough self-care. And a lot of them have been put on some sort of antidepressant. And once again, I have no problem with medication, but you cannot have medication and drink the wine. Like it just doesn't work because it's a downward spiral 99.9% of the time. So I'm so glad because when I talk about sobriety, I wanted to talk about it like it's the sunshine because you're getting a great life. It's happiness. It's filled because life is going to happen and there's ups and downs, but without the depressant of alcohol and everything else that goes with it, it's going to be that much easier. And if you don't have a problem, then I'm not a hater of alcohol. Like I'm just not, like other people drink around me and they can have one glass of wine in a whole night. Well, that was not me. So,
right.
Like that's okay, right? That's the reality.
Right. And just because you say that you didn't necessarily have a problem or a rock bottom doesn't mean that you weren't drinking maybe a little more than you should or like things like that. Because because I have a lot of mom friends that aren't alcoholics, but I'm like, dang, you throw down sometimes.
Yeah. And it's so funny because when I stopped, then I was able to see what I thought was normal was far from normal. Very far from normal.
Yeah. So what are some things that you think that people should know about sober life? I know you said you talk about it as sunshine. I like that.
Well, I think for me, when I meet young women or young men, the first thing I'll do is I love to send them one positive word in the morning and one at night, and then have to send one back to me because 9 times out of 10, whether you're on pills or you do drugs or alcohol, everybody seems to feel like they need to fill something. And what it is their self-worth, I really believe, is the problem. Not feeling smart enough, not feeling pretty enough, not feeling like they belong and they want to fit in. So to me, the first thing is to start remembering all the qualities you have. Like whether you're an artist or you're sporty or you're a bookworm, you can be anything that you are, and that's okay. And that's my first thing about when, you take away the alcohol, because for many, it is that liquid courage, or it makes you feel like you can talk to anybody or whatever. But I'm telling you, it's going to be so much better without it. Number one, and the people you're going to meet are really going to get you. And to me, when you could say, well, me too, I felt like that, or not feel embarrassed to talk about your feelings and have people, like that's the biggest gift. I have lots of great friends, and I was one of the lucky ones where I didn't lose a lot of people in my life when I stopped drinking, because most of my friends actually did not drink that much, believe it or not. The few that drank too much are not in my life, obviously, but most of them didn't. And so now for people, it's just your whole world shifts. And in the last 11 years, the people I've met around the world that are so creative and so different. And like it just opens up doors that you have no idea of what possibilities are in front of you if you get rid of that one thing.
Yeah, I think one thing you bring up is the community that you've gained in sobriety. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think we talked a little bit about it before, but what are the relationships like? Like, how have your relationships changed?
Well, there's so many. I have one woman that I met. She runs an organization called Big Vision in New York. She makes me want to be a better person every day. She's helping to save other people's children, even though she lost her son 10 years ago. So that inspires me, motivates me to want to be better, to do better. Then all the young women that I've met, and I just want them to not wait till they're 60 to feel like they're enough. Like, I think if I could get through to them, and like I have one young woman I met, Kelly Marie, and she's a nurse. And during COVID, we were doing this I am back and forth. And she said, I am hardworking. I said, no, you are dedicated. Well, if you'd seen the shift in her face. So, meeting people and seeing them from where they were and then them helping somebody else is like the best feeling in the world. I've been able to walk in New York City Fashion Week last year for a nonprofit that is all inclusive, whether you're tall or you're short or you're this, and it's all for mental health and addiction. And who would have thought that would have ever happened at 62 years of age? And at first I said, no, I'm just not. I'm not good enough. And then right away I caught myself and said, I was scared out of my mind, but I said, I'm telling people every single day that they can do this. They can achieve different things. So I've got to try this, no matter what. But it was hard, but I got through it. And to have 250 sober people in one room was electrifying. Like, honestly, it's a memory that I will have for the rest of my life. So, and for the other thing is too, all the people I've met, I remember their kids' names. I remember so much about them. I remember sober dates. I'm more compassionate. There's so many more things I'm able to do and learn from all these different people. Before, I think I was more ribbons and bows and that's it. And I was kind of just, like in a little box almost.
Yeah.
And right. And now in the last 11 years, my mind is so like, I read different books. I talk to different people. I look at the world in completely different eyes. And it's because of all the people I've met. And I'm so grateful that they trust me enough to share their lives with. It's incredible.
I love that. I think the community in sobriety is probably my favorite thing. And it's just because relationships are so much deeper and you just, I guess, know so much more about people and you care so much more about people because you're not just worried about yourself, right?
And I think too, they're more in tune to, at least maybe I've just been so lucky, but it seems like everybody kind of has a feeling when somebody's not doing so well and reaches out, which is fantastic.
Like a sixth sense, hey?
Yeah. It's just like, people say, how did you know to send me a message this morning? And I know there's something bigger than me because I wake up, my phone, I put on my phone and there's somebody I think of or something and boom. And it's the same for so many that I've helped are now giving back to others. And that is the best thing ever.
Yeah, it definitely is. So when you first got sober, or if somebody wanted to get sober now, what are the things that you did to begin with to stop drinking? Is there anything that you put in place to like kind of change your habits, or how did that work?
Well, the first thing was I got hypnotized because I had been smoking on and off for most of my life. And 5 years prior, I had finally done hypnosis and I was able to quit smoking. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do it for the wine. And so it did kind of just take that edge off. But right away, I would get up, I would walk more. I was trying to exercise more. The other thing I tried to do was meditate, because I had a lot of trouble sitting and meditating. Like, that was just like, oh my God, this is so hard just to, like, I was just not used to being quiet,
Right.
That was really hard. And it still is hard for me. I still find some days are easier than others, but that was huge. And honestly, I think just talking with as many people as I could. And I guess I was just so lucky because I kept getting all these questions and answers. And as I was looking for things for them, it was helping me, right?
Yeah.
It was just uncanny, because people would tell me something and I'd go, oh, yeah, it's true. Like, I'm sleeping better, or I'm feeling better, or my mind. But for me, the mind was the biggest thing. It took, I find, at least 2 years for it to be super clear. Like, that brain fog thing for me took a long time.
I agree with that. I was talking to somebody the other day about early sobriety and how often it's like seen as a punishment, like you're in trouble, so you have to go to treatment or this or that. And I said, for me, the punishment was every time I thought about getting sober, I had tried a lot of times, but I was miserable. And I think what I want people to know, or always tell people when they're first getting sober, is how you feel when you're getting sober is not how you feel when you're sober, right? Like, 3 years, I had this like boost of sunshine that like I've never felt in my whole entire life ever. Like, things change so much when you're first getting sober. You're going to have like that mind fog and maybe some anxiety, and like just things take a while to like regulate, and your real personality and your real, I guess, hormones even to like even out. So I even like, I've worked in treatment forever, and I had no idea that like how you feel when you're sober a few days is not how you feel when you're sober a year.
No. And you have to be patient. I remember when I celebrated my first year of sobriety, somehow I thought, the whole world was going to stop and there was going to be firecrackers and it was going to be like the best day of my life. And it was such a boring, lousy day. It was raining. It was just awful. Like, nothing went well that day. And I thought, wow, is this what this is all about? And then the next day was fine again. But that's just life, right? It's, you can get that pink cloud, and lucky if you do, but everything takes, and you've got to be patient.
Yeah, I kept saying, what pink cloud? Like, there's been nothing fun about this until about a year. But, if I sit down and think about it, I drank for 20 years, almost every day.
Exactly.
So it takes time. They talk about people when they're pregnant and they gain weight and all this stuff, and you have the baby and you just want to be skinny right away.
Yeah.
Like, you took 9 months to grow a baby. It takes a little bit of time to get back to your normal self, and you might have to work at it a little bit. It kind of reminds me of that a little bit. Like, it doesn't just, you stop drinking and you feel amazing, but I definitely feel amazing these days.
Yeah. And the other thing I think that was the biggest thing was I saw a lot of people start and stop. And, to me, it was, they were so afraid to just say, okay, I made that little mistake, or that there was a bump in the road, and let's try again right away. I didn't want that shame. I never wanted someone to feel that shame. And that, in the last 10 years, I see a huge difference in the mentality of people, that they are able to own it and say, okay, let's move on, like not stay stuck in that shame.
The last time that I got or tried to get sober, I actually vowed and did not count my days. It's funny because what is it called? The message page or whatever, Carly, she reached out to me and was like, can I do like a little thing, a segment, put your picture and stuff? And I was like, oh yeah, that's so cool. And she asked for my sober date, and I was like, I have no idea. Let me go back and look. And she literally like counted the days and told me I had tried so many times and like failed, that this last time I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not counting, because I keep feeling like I like let myself down, or like that time didn't count, or all of that. And the truth is that yes, I made a mistake or I used or whatever I did, but that doesn't mean that that time didn't count. Like that was a seed planted. It was part of my time. So I kind of had to let that go in order to stop sabotaging myself. For a long time, I was just like, oh, I had 3 months. I ruined it. Now I have to start over. Day one, over and over again. And I finally was like, I'm not doing that. I am working on living a sober life. And at this point, I have way more time sober over the last 2 years than I have drunk. And I couldn't say that for a long time. So that is a move in the right direction.
And you know, the other thing I find is so important is no matter if, you know, some people want to count, some people don't want to count. Some people do AA, some people do meditation, some people do yoga. I did hypnosis and work. I think sobriety is more than just one thing. You know, you can do many things, and it's okay as long as it works for you. And no questions asked, nothing, just whatever works for you, right? And that's the most important.
Yep, I'm definitely a creature of I take a little bit of everything from everywhere. A little bit of God, a little bit of AA, a little bit of doctors. I take a little bit of it all.
You know, I've heard this saying once, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. And I thought, wow, you know what? Everywhere I go, I should learn a little something and be open because, you know, for that one person that struggles so much, maybe this thing that somebody's going to tell me is going to help them. You know, you just don't know. So by meeting people and talking to people and being open, it just gives you the ability to help someone else with so many different ideas. Because once you get sober and you stop drinking, you know, there's going to be weddings, there's going to be funerals, there's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times. And alcohol is just about everywhere, you know, in reality. That's 100%. So you have to have all kinds of different ways to treat different situations. So whatever works, right?
Yep, I totally agree. And I had been to treatment quite a few times, probably 4 maybe. And my last time going to treatment, I moved to this place where it was kind of like a sober town, right? Everybody had sober living homes and things like that. And I moved there. And once I moved out of sober living, I got a job and my kids moved right back in with me. And I ended up using again. And like the whole town, it felt like, was like looking at me like crazy, like not accepting me, and I remember at that time, I was like, no matter what, like when I help people, I'm going to help people, whether they're doing good or doing bad, because I feel like, you know, it is a process for people, and everybody's not going to make it the first time. Everybody's not going to make it the second time. And all you can do is keep trying and not give up.
Because to me, that's failure. When you stop trying, then you fail. Not if you made a mistake and you try again. That's absolutely, I believe 100%. And, you know, and being compassionate and not judging anybody, because we don't know what it is that somebody feels or has gone through in their life many times. So how can you judge somebody that you have no idea what they've had to go through?
Right. And, you know, they may not have found the right tool yet. I think I tried a whole bunch of tools that didn't work. And then, you know, some of them worked a little bit, and finally just everything together clicked. So I think it is really important to remember that, like, everybody's different, and the same shoe that fits you isn't going to fit me.
and that's one of my sayings. I'm going to be here until.
Yes. And I love that. I love the non-judgment.
Because, you know, let's face it, whether you're on a diet or it's drinking or it's out drugs or whatever, we are so hard on ourselves, and it's so much easier to believe the negative than to remember the positive. We don't need anybody else shoving it down our throat when we've made a mistake, you know, or we've, you know, somehow something didn't go quite the way it was supposed to. So we don't need to pile on and make them feel any worse, because they feel bad enough on their own, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. So one thing that you talked about that I thought was a good point was exercise and how that
Yeah.
can kind of change how you feel and change your world in sobriety. And I thought that was cool because I just started my own kind of exercise journey. I was that girl who was like, I hate exercising. I'm not doing it. And I kept telling everybody I'm having like such low energy all the time. And I had this doctor on the podcast and he was like, you have to move for like
Yes.
at least
Yes.
30 minutes a day. I know it sounds counterproductive, but the more you move, the more energy you're going to have. And I was like, yeah, right. Well, I started working out just a few weeks ago, and the amount of energy that I have is like crazy. So, how is your like workout? What do you do for exercise?
I love putting earphones on with loud music. And I used to jog. And then last year, it was just like I had an ankle problem. I had something else. And so I kind of stopped for a while and I just felt I went like this, like my moods, just everything. So I started walking and walking and walking and walking. And now sometimes I run, sometimes I walk. But the minute I stop, whatever it is, exercising, whether it's just walking like 30 minutes a day,
Mhm.
because it's like I never really want to do it, but once I've done it, I'm so happy I did, right?
Yeah.
So I have to really condition myself to, and now I'm trying to actually go back out. I read something the other day that 4 o'clock, even if you go out for 15 minutes, at 4 o'clock, there's something about for the whole, your body and your system and your organs, there's something like huge that happens at 4 o'clock. So there's a real self-healing to just even walking for 15 minutes. So that's my next thing is I'm going to try every day at 4 because before I had a dog and before I had, my dog was 14, almost 14 when she passed away. When you have a dog, you go out all the time. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Rain, it's snowing, it's cold, it's hot, you're outside. And without a dog, I got lazy, to be honest. So if you really have to, and I'm really making a conscious effort. I'm trying to track my food now. I'm really trying to do as much to keep myself in that space, so that, and I'm not saying 7 days because I think 5 days is enough. For me, at least 5 days seems to be manageable, and I can miss one day when I'm kind of feeling a bit tired because I'm trying to listen more to my body also. So
Yeah.
there's like a balance now, but even when I don't want to, I make sure I go.
Yeah, I hired a trainer, whatever, and we kind of talked about, I was like, listen, anything that's long, I'm not doing it. So we did these like 10-minute hit workouts with like barbell or little weights or whatever and stuff. And I actually get like the best little endorphin rush and like, I had no idea. I was like, there's all this like happy rush out there that I didn't know about.
and that's why they keep saying exercise is the least prescribed drug to help everybody. It doesn't matter if you're young, if you're old. The kids, they love to run outside and play and whatever. So, we just have to move. It's essential, I think.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've been in recovery for almost 3 years now, and it's something that I've been like the anti-workout girl. So I really had no idea. Like just in this week, I was just like, oh my goodness, it really does make you feel good. So I think that's something that I definitely encourage people to check out because I had no idea. It really is like super helpful.
And also, I think it really does help your sleep. It
Mhm.
really does help you sleep better because, when you have kids or you don't have kids or whatever, just life, we all get those like moments where, we start to get a little in our own heads at bedtime. So that being outside or doing some sort of exercise also helps with that, which can't be bad. It just can't.
I agree. It's going to be my new obsession now. Not a whole lot, but I love it. I really do like it. So it's cool that you can add and find new things all the time that like add to your life.
That's right. And like next week, there's a girl here in Montreal and she's going to do a yoga day, but a different kind of yoga. I'm not quite sure, But I said, sure, I'm going to try it. Where before I would have said, no, I don't do yoga. I don't like hot yoga. I don't like this. I don't like that. So now at least I'm trying different things, which I think is important.
I love that. So what do you see for Sober is the New Cool? What are your dreams coming up here? What do you got going?
Well, I'm going back to New York City to walk in another fashion week. And again, it's all to, the funds go all for mental health and addiction. And to me, it's just to keep this community going and to keep everybody, stronger. And, for people just to know they're not alone. And we will get through this together. And for people, I think the biggest thing for me is there's always hope. There's always hope. As long as you're alive, there's always hope. For the mother that's worried about their child that's out on the street, we just have to keep trying. And somehow, some way, whether you pray or you this or you that, there's always hope, because I've seen some incredible things. And, Sober is the New Cool. We do an international recovery walk. So people from all over the world do it virtually, and we do one in Montreal. And I think the most important thing for me is for people to know that they're not alone. They don't have to have this shame, because there still is shame. And unfortunately, I find a lot of people, until it hits their family, they don't get it. Right. And it's that the awareness has to continue, and there's so much work left to be done. And every day there's somebody that comes to me and says, I found this new way or a new treatment or, a new exercise or whatever. So I'm always anxious, because you don't know if that thing is going to be the thing to help somebody else, right?
Right. Well, I have loved having you on. It's been so good. Is there anything that you want to leave our viewers with today?
Well, I want them to know that they are loved, they are heard, and they are worthy of a great life.
Thank you so much. All right. Yay!
Thank you.